Hi everybody and welcome back to Kirkham Movie A Day. Today I'm going to talk about the film that I saw Monday night. This was not a Paramount screening, this was a Fathom event. No, it wasn't a Fathom event, it was an Alamo event. And Alamo has been doing kind of a throwback to 1984, 1989, different years that they're running a whole bunch of movies for during any one of their months. And July is 1984. 1984, as anybody who has read this site knows, is one of my favorite years for movies. I had a whole project devoted to the year 1984. It was actually 10 years ago. The post was titled 30 Years On, 1984, a great year for movies. This, of course, is 2024, so it's 40 years on now. And I'm still going to defend 1984 as a great year for movies. And I got a chance to see one of those movies on Monday, and it offers us a little bit of controversy. This is Brian De Palma's Body Double, which was basically a commercial flop. It was widely criticized when it came out. Back in 1984, the first year that I had cable television, we had a program called the Cinema Preview Channel, which ran trailers for upcoming movies several times a day. And when they weren't running trailers, they had a little cinema score system that they had set up for movies that were being released in the year. And I remember seeing Body Double scored as a D movie on an A, B, C, D, F scale. And it was ranked as a D by the audience scores. People really did not care for it. But I've got to tell you that I have a very different opinion on it. In fact, I'm about to say something that may be a little blasphemous to some fans. I think Body Double is the most well-made of his films, at least when it comes to direction. Brian De Palma is performing a magic act right in front of us on screen, and it works most of the time. And even though we know we're being tricked, and sometimes we can even see the way the mechanism is tricking us, it still works. It still makes the movie better as a result. And there are just so many things about this that I love that make this movie great. I said it the other day when I was going to the movie with my daughter. I said, this is my favorite De Palma film. And she looked at me like I was crazy because I love The Untouchables and Mission Impossible is great. I've been a huge fan of Blowout. I just think that Body Double is the place that Brian De Palma gets the opportunity to do the most with his talents, to play the most with the technical skills that he has, to twist the story around and make it work in an interesting way, and to visually enthrall us. And as a result, this movie, like I said, just feels to me like it works all over the place. One of the ways that it works is that it constantly shifts our perspective. Sometimes we're looking at it from a third-person perspective. We're observing the world, and we're seeing the actor who's at the center of this story, played by Craig Wasson. The character's name is Jake Sully, and Jake is kind of a sad sack. He's a motivated, committed actor, but he's stuck in the rut of working in an exploitation film, a horror film. He's done Shakespeare in the Park kinds of things, and he's appeared in some episodes of television shows. So he's a working actor struggling to get by in Hollywood at this time, but obviously he's not at the top of his game. And from the very beginning, we know that this is a character that is going to be pretty feckless. Look, the very first trick that De Palma plays on us is suckering us into a movie. It looks like we're watching a vampire movie, and it turns out that we're watching the making of a vampire movie as the camera pulls back and reveals that the star has become paralyzed in the supposed underground coffin that he's in, and he can't continue to perform. And that's Jake. Jake goes home and discovers that his girlfriend is having an affair with somebody else, and he sees a look on her face that he's never seen before, and he suddenly realizes that he just doesn't cut it for her. So he feels ineffectual. He's lost his place of business. He's basically losing his job, and he's lost a residence, and he happens into a situation where he lucks into a sublet, so to speak, which is not typical, but it does happen sometimes. especially in Los Angeles. Maybe people in New York do subletting on a regular basis. In LA, it's not really a typical kind of thing. There used to be a lot of apartments that were available that people could do. It's not maybe the case anymore. But so we suddenly see Jake being given an opportunity to take up residence in the most expensive, elaborate fantasy house possible. This is the fantasy flying saucer house that I think was featured in one of the Lethal Weapon films. I think it was probably Lethal Weapon 2 that the movie appeared in. Could have been Lethal Weapon 3. I can't quite remember. It was so preposterous. But it's one of those houses. It's up on stilts. You have to take a gondola. There's a long set of stairs, but you can take a gondola up to the house. And by the way, that's the second L.A. residence with a gondola that takes people way up a hillside that I've seen in the last couple of days, because they have the same kind of travel arrangement when you arrive at a residence in the movie Maxine that I saw on Saturday night. Maxine, by the way, and Body Double have a lot in common. They're both set in kind of the seedy industry of Hollywood, exploitation films, pornography, that sort of thing. They're both set in the mid 1980s, so there's a lot of stuff between them that they have in common. They've got the same kind of DNA that's going on here. But De Palma, like I said, is frequently changing perspective. So at one point it feels like we are seeing a movie, and then we realize that we're seeing a movie being made. And then later on, we are back into watching a sequence that is supposed to be taking in real life, but then we're given a movie reference to the process shot behind the camera when the guy's driving the car. Sometimes he's actually in the car, sometimes there's a process shot, and it's not being disguised. It seems like it's a deliberate attempt to remind us that we're looking at a movie. There's a lot of that kind of thing that goes on in the film. And when we get to the climax of the movie, the same thing happens. There's a sequence that takes place on a porn soundstage that is a combination of music video, pornography filming, and of course there's a dramatic storytelling that's going on in our main story. This is a movie that is managing to juggle different elements and trick us repeatedly into seeing something that isn't really there. This is basically the bastard child of Hitchcock and Brian De Palma. De Palma is frequently borrowed from the master in making his movies. He's been accused of ripping off Hitchcock. If you want to call it a rip-off, you can, but I think they're inspirations more than anything else. And the inspiration for this film is both Vertigo and Rear Window, because we have a main protagonist who is both a voyeur and somebody who is paralyzed by claustrophobia. So paralyzed, in fact, that he can't even approach the antagonist in one situation in a pedestrian tunnel at the beach. He basically becomes trapped and unable to respond in an appropriate way, which is exactly what the antagonist was looking for. That's why he picked Jake, because Jake is ineffectual, because he does have this particular problem, and it does get revealed early on. This story has lots and lots of setups for why it is going to play out the way it's going to play out. The best sequence in the movie, from my point of view, is when Jake is following the woman that he's been spying on through his telescope in the saucer house, and he sees that she is being followed by a Native American criminal-looking guy that is basically stalking her. And so he is basically a stalker who is stalking the stalker that he has seen. And of course, because it's got this Hitchcockian twist to it, it turns out that Jake gets paralyzed a little bit, not only by his claustrophobia, but also by the voyeurism that he inhabits. There's a sequence when he's following the woman that he is attracted to and trying to protect her from the scary-looking guy that is following her, where he basically peers through a window of a upscale boutique while she is trying on underwear, and he's looking basically into the dressing room, and can't see what's going on around him, and he misses several things that are happening. And later on, of course, that becomes a twist in the story, suggesting more his guilt in her death than anything else, because he is so ineffectual. The final twists in the film take place, as a reversal of what was going on at the beginning of the movie, where the claustrophobia has to be dealt with, and he has to get past it. And unlike Jimmy Stewart in Vertigo, where we get a repeat kind of experience and a bummer outcome, and frankly, I think De Palma went the opposite direction this time from what he had done in Blowout by giving us a bummer outcome in that one. He's looking for a more positive outcome here, and in this case, Jake manages to fight back to some degree. It was an interesting twist. Once again, there are things in Los Angeles in 1984 that show up here that are just the kinds of things that I knew well, because I lived in that area. I drove up and down all of those streets on a regular basis. I was a movie geek, and I liked driving through the places where things were being filmed, and the movie poster store that I went to was right on Hollywood Boulevard. It's just one of those things that is very nostalgic for me. But what's not nostalgic for me is that De Palma really is doing incredible things here. And by the way, the music scores in this are perfect. He's working with Pino Donaggio, who he worked with in several other films. I think Carrie and Blowout and Dressed to Kill also. And the score here is terrific, and it is used so well. I Craig Wasson is not a star. He had kind of a milquetoast sort of personality and face. I mentioned in a blog post that I did 10 years ago on this film that he reminded me of Bill Maher, and I still think that's true. He's a doppelganger for him. Greg Henry is in the movie, and he's terrific. Dennis Franz, before he was in NYPD Blue, he plays basically Brian De Palma as the filmmaker making the film. So it's kind of interesting that we get that perspective also. Like I said, it's full of twists and interesting things. The story has plot holes. Some things are unbelievable. You have to suspend your disbelief on a lot of points, but you don't care. It's like watching a magic show on stage. You know those things are not real, that there's some trick to it, but we're enjoying the illusion as we're watching it, and that's what makes this movie work so well for me, and that's why I like it so much. So I hope you get a chance to see Body Double, especially if you get a chance to see it on the big screen. You should do so. It's a terrific movie that I think it's acquired a lot better reputation than it had when it originally came out. So you make sure to check it out when you get the opportunity. All right, until next time, thanks everybody.